Hello and welcome to the Band of One podcast. I'm Riley Wilson. This podcast is for anyone that wants to start, grow, or maintain an existing small group like a solo performer, duo, or trio, heck, even a DJ for that matter. I've got over 50 years of live performance experience and will include not only my tips, but the tips from other working pros across the globe and the things that they've learned to help make you smarter, better, faster, and even make more money. If you like what we do, subscribe, and don't forget to share the podcast. Consider becoming a subscriber. Let's get busy. Today I have on the phone with me a veteran musician that's been a bit of a part of the Texas music scene for longer than I have, Mr. Steve Henry. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Riley. Appreciate you inviting me.
This is going to be a lot of fun. First of all, like I always ask everybody, let's begin at the beginning. You are from Texas, right?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me why you got mixed up in music and weren't a football player or something like that, or
Why did I get mixed up in music? I think music was just kind of in me from the very beginning. My mother was a high school music teacher, elementary teacher, so we had piano around the house. We always had music. She got me taking piano lessons at a very early age, but I guess late in elementary school, I just got the guitar bug. So I borrowed an old K acoustic guitar that had strings that were just about as rusty as could be. I mean, it was almost cutting your fingers, Obviously hadn't built up any calluses on my finger at that point. But my dad had told me if I'd learned how to play and sing Johnny Be Good, which was his favorite song, that he would go and he would buy me an electric guitar. So I took that guitar and I worked through everything. I got me a Mel Bay chord book and figured it all out and did it. So one day my father came home. He worked in a refinery. He stopped on the pawn shop on the way home and brought home an old Fender, a white Fender Mustang with a red pick guard and a little Fender amp. I'm not even sure what it could have been, a Mustang amp. I don't remember, but that was like the best thing I'd ever received in my life.
wow. This is so interesting because we both shared the same two first guitars. My first guitar that I got when I was 12 years old was a K that looked like a Les Paul, was a hollow body
Yeah.
with 3 pickups, a 4-way blender switch, and 6 volume and tone knobs. It
Wow.
only had 18 frets, so I ran out of frets. And later the next year, was 12 at the time. The next year, my summer before I turned 13, I spent all summer cutting a lady's lawn in Michigan, and ended up saving for to go to buy a white Fender Mustang with a red tortoiseshell pickguard. It was $189 from a store called Peralta Music there in Farmington, Michigan. And boy, I'll tell you, I thought I had won the lottery when that happened.
Yeah, that's I wish I still had that. You don't happen to have yours, do you?
I don't. It's long gone, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I still remember the serial number.
Oh my
And
God.
which is wild because I've probably, like you, I've had well over 100 guitars in my lifetime. I probably have about 6 or 7 now. But one of the things about Mustangs that nobody talks about is that it was a short scale guitar. It was a 24-inch scale. And
Right.
so that made it, if you're a teenager, you haven't got your height or your size yet. I didn't have the biggest hands. And so that was a great fit for me. And, I could pretend to be Jimi Hendrix or whoever else I wanted to be at the time. And, it was a wonderful learning guitar. And,
Yeah.
it's interesting, those things. I've seen the 70s models now going for like $3,000. And
Oh my
I don't
God.
think a $3,000 guitar, but you know how our people are with vintage instruments. So,
Oh yeah.
so you end up getting this guitar and you just learn how to play Johnny Be Good from a chord book.
Pretty much. Well, I listened to it, and I just figured out, well, it's an E and A and a B or B7,
Yeah.
and if you can't do that, or maybe I played it in GCD, I don't remember, but yeah, that's pretty much it. But I was highly motivated because there were some friends of mine, and this was right before, I guess about right at the beginning of the 7th grade. And we had decided that we lived out in a little tiny town north of Amarillo and pretty much nothing else to do. But we had decided we needed to form a band. So, I'm like, I'm all in, but I need a guitar first.
Well, that's fantastic. So, and I think probably the fact that, you grew up in a musical family, mom played and taught piano and you had some piano, that probably helped as well. So did you keep up with this band while you were in, for us, probably was junior high school, senior high school?
I did. I played with those same guys. Had a couple of different drummers, but we played through junior high. And in fact, it wasn't shortly after we started together that the school had an assembly, and they asked us to play. And so we go up there, and I forget. I think we played one by Three Dog Night, and all three of us sang. So we played it, and everybody clapped, and that was like the best feeling I think I'd ever had. It was awesome. I was hooked at that point. But we stayed together all through elementary school and into high school, all 4 years of high school, and we got into high school. We were playing a lot of dances and sock hops and private parties all around the Panhandle and oh gosh, Western Oklahoma and even Eastern New Mexico. That we stayed for a bunch of high school kids. We stayed pretty busy gigging.
That's a great story because a lot of folks didn't have the opportunity to do that when they were in high school or whatever. And the fact that you guys had stayed together all that time, I imagine that probably by the time you're juniors or seniors, the band was tight and was sounding really good.
We did. We had quite, actually had a pretty good repertoire of music. We could keep them out on the dance floor, dancing the whole night long. So yeah, it was good.
What kind of music were you guys playing, Steve?
Oh gosh, I'm sure it was classic rock. I mean, just a typical, classic rock. Anything from Cream to, oh gosh, Three Dog Night to maybe a little Leonard Skinner. I mean, anything that was happening back in the mid '70s. That's early '70s. That's what we were doing.
It's interesting. I saw an article the other day. I'm trying to remember what it was, but they said that 1973 was the greatest year of classic rock, and that happened to be the year I graduated high school. So I'm very familiar with all of that.
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so you're finished high school. What's next?
Well,
Headed to
uh,
college?
yeah. Well, actually, all of us went to junior college. Um, and we quickly discovered that we probably weren't college material. Um, we specialized in not going to class and
Hmm,
playing music. And it's funny, we we got a call from an agent here in Dallas called C.W. Kendall.
I know
Uh,
CW.
yeah, and how he got our name, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just because we've been playing so much up there. But he said if we wanted to go on the road, he would start booking us, and that we had 1 week, and he had gig for us in Abilene. So we immediately all drop out of college. We I remember going home to see my mom and tell her that I was dropping out of college and becoming a professional musician. And the poor look on the poor woman's face, it's like going to be the end of the world here. But we got it all together in 1 week. We had enough music for a 3 hour set, a 4 hour set actually, and off we went, and down the road we went, and Abilene, and then we spent the next 3 years not pretty much nonstop on the road. We had about a week off every year, but we were playing six nights a week every week, and it was like for kids that were essentially 18, early 19 years old, it was like the best thing ever.
Well, that's obviously a great way to get good quickly, but I would guess that's also quite an education, maybe a PhD in human relations, right?
That absolutely, and I'll tell you a couple of things as I sort of reflect back on those years. The one thing is, I mean, here's these kids from Fritch, Texas. Population 1,200 in the middle of nowhere. None of us had ever really been anywhere, and so all of a sudden now we're traveling throughout the South and the Midwest, and we're playing clubs, and we're meeting people from 18 to 78, and it was quite an education. And in that sense, about, as you said, getting the PhD in life, it really did give you. I mean, that there were bad things about it, but there were a lot of good things too.
Well, for those, and again, as we mentioned before, I did that for some time myself, where you leave in January, get home in July, get a week off, and then you leave in July, get home in January. For folks that have never done that, can you talk about kind of what's involved with that? What does it feel like? What does it mean when you're on stage every night?
Uh, well, uh, it's kind of interesting. I mean, as we were traveling, we met some bands, and I mean, they got their 4 hours worth of music down, and then they never learned anything else. I mean, they didn't practice; they just showed up and played. One thing that kind of made us unique is that we had a real passion to get better and to learn more music and to stay current and all that sort of thing. So we were fairly disciplined in some ways, but we were fairly disciplined in going to practice every day. So as a result, when we went to play every night, uh, we were pretty tight. And you play every night for 3 years with pretty much the same lineup, you get really, really tight. And you just get that sense. And the band had a lot of multiple harmonies. That was kind of one of our things. But it was good. I mean, you had the downside, which is the whole band drama thing.
Yeah.
But as far as just the sheer joy of doing it, um, the travel is hard. I tell a story. I said the worst thing that happened to me that first year we were out. It's Christmas morning, and we're in Austin, Texas, playing a week in Austin, Texas, and we're at the Waffle House for Christmas morning.
Cool.
you know, Not barely 19 years old, and it's like, oh, poor us. But that was kind of the low. But there was a whole lot more highs than that.
Well, it's funny. I think about the story. One time somebody asked Dwayne Allman how he got so good. And he said, by taking speed and playing every night for 3 years with rock bands.
Yeah,
And I Dwayne was probably only about a third kidding, because there's no substitute for getting out there and mixing it up. Now, you
absolutely.
earlier that you learned to play the guitar, and are you also one of the singers for the group?
I am. I was then, and the band that I'm in now. Yes, I sing both lead and harmony. I love singing harmony. I love singing lead too, but I really almost as much enjoy singing harmony.
Well, here's a question. Did you ever take voice lessons or sing in the choir at church or school or anything like that?
Uh, did a little bit of singing in the choir in church, but mostly that was the older folks. But I was in choir in school. But I lived 3 miles outside of this little town, which was in the middle of nowhere. So I was miles outside the middle of nowhere. And so as I was growing up, I had this piano, and I just sit there, night after night, and go in there and write songs and sing. So I am self taught. Um, uh, I wish I'd have had some lessons, but yeah, it's okay. I've enjoyed myself.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of times, if you spend enough time with a musical instrument, you get it. John McLaughlin, the great English jazz rock guitar player, said that they didn't have schools for him when he was learning to play the guitar in the 1950s and 60s. He said all he had were chords. So
Yep.
he had to unlock chords, and he said that led him into scales and modes
Right.
and all things. And I think, however you get it, it's really really vital to get it. One of the things that occurs to me as we talk about this is that you and these other guys that you're in this band with, you guys must have had a great love for not just playing but also the music to remain current, because that's a challenge. That requires that you actually work at it, but it sounds like it was something that you enjoyed and maybe it didn't feel like work.
No, it never felt like work. It absolutely never felt like work. The going in and practicing and whatever thing, you're living with people, even though they're your best friends. You're living and sleeping and working, and 24/7, 365 with guys. I mean, there's you start getting a little rubbed periodically the wrong way with one or other. It's like family. That's what it is. It's like family. But when it came to the music, all that stuff was set aside, went away, and we were serious. I mean, we were serious about being professional musicians.
So 3 years into this, is it still shiny and new, Or did it start to kind of wear on you? I thought, you know what, maybe I want to look at something else.
Well, it's yeah, about 3 years in. I mean, you got to keep in mind we'd had three weeks off in 3 years, and even though we were young and all that sort of thing, between a little bit of the band drama and just kind of being tired, I remember literally that first week, our first gig in Abilene. The night we had off, the one night we had off that week, we of course we would go to another bar to listen to a band because we were so into it. Anyway, there was this band in the nicest club in Abilene, and we were all kind of starry eyed, and they were nice to us. Fast forward about 3 years, and gosh, I can't remember what town we were in, maybe Shreveport somewhere. But who should walk into the club but these same three guys? And at that point, we were playing the biggest places and the nicest clubs wherever we went. You know, 500 plus people. Well, these guys had come in and they kind of hit their peak, and they were back playing, the Holiday Inn, little Holiday Inn things. And I started thinking to myself, you know, yeah, at that point, I thought this is just going forever. And candidly, for a lot of people, it does. For most of us, however, there's a bye-bye date. So I'm like, okay, I need to take a break.
Interesting. And what did that look like? Obviously, just coming home and not playing 6 nights a week for 51 weeks a year.
Well, I came home. I got a job doing construction because I needed the money. But I was still doing, I was playing a little gigs around with people back in the Panhandle periodically, and then after a while, I said, you know what, maybe I ought to go to college. And so, despite having the spectacular resume of dropping out of junior college and being a professional musician for 3 years, for some reason, somebody actually accepted me.
Wow. And this is where?
Texas A&M.
Nice. College Station, home of the 12th man.
Yeah, gig 'em.
Yeah. By the way, I'm still furious that they sold that to the Seattle Seahawks, but that's another story for you.
Oh, I know.
Day. Anyway, so what did you go to A&M to study?
Well, I didn't know. I just went there. I'd never been to A&M. I had no idea what it was like. A friend of mine that I'd known in high school, he says he was going there. So we show up, and all of a sudden we're looking around, and of course I'd had hair all the way down to there and all this stuff, and looking around, and here's all these guys walking around with really short haircuts, military uniforms, and telling everybody howdy. So it was a bit of a culture shock for me. I adapted quickly. I love A&M. It's great people, good place to be. But so I started with nothing. I ended up majoring in international trade and development in the School of Agriculture, of all things. Why, Riley? I have no idea.
Well, hang on a second. Let me put a little background in for folks that aren't from our great state of Texas. First of all, Lubbock, right, or heck, Amarillo, the area where you grew up in the Panhandle, is a long stinking drive to Southeast Texas, Bryan College Station. What is it, 6, 7, 8 hour drive?
Oh, at least, yeah.
We're talking about the northwest part of the state to the southeast part of the state. So we got a physical distance there. A&M stands for Agriculture and Mechanical. For those of you that don't know, A&M is an international ag and mechanical school, one of the greatest in the whole world. More about that later. So you end up getting an international degree,
right? Trade and development. I don't know how. It's just one of those things. I'm not sure I ever had much of a plan in life. I just kind of muddled from one thing to the other, but I end up to the point where I get this job offer to become a grain trader, working with this small company that bought grain in South America and brought it to the United States and sold it. Pretty simple job. So that's what I was doing during the years I was there. However, I spent because we had a lot of fun when I was playing professionally, so I didn't save any money. So I needed to work. I needed to work bad. So fortunately, music offered me a way while I was there at school to pay my way through college. I worked part-time construction, but a lot of times, many nights a week, just playing music.
Okay, so were you playing in bands here or doing a smaller act or both, or how was that working?
Both. I had sort of a smaller thing going on. Me and the guitar, and I would play in a little little club or a little a restaurant or something like that. And then had a little rock band that I played with as well. And so we played places like the Dixie Chicken, the world famous Dixie Chicken, Farkleberries in a lot of different places. Played this little bar called Grins. I mean, and it was a college town, and we didn't make a ton of money, but it was all important to me back then.
Sure. So let me get this straight. You're going to A&M as a full-time student. You're working construction. You're working with the band, and you're doing solo gigs at the same time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Steve, for anybody else, that's a recipe for flunkage 101. How in the world did you ever graduate with spinning those many plates, pal?
Because there was no plan B. By that point, after you leave home and say thanks, mom and dad, I'm going to go on the road and be a musician. There's kind of no going back. So at that point, it was sort of all on me, and it was like, whatever I get out of this is what I'm going to get out of it. There's it's not going to be anybody backing me up. So it motivates you. Plus, by the way, though, the whole playing music thing didn't feel like a job. That felt like going out and having fun, and it still does, candidly.
The thing that's interesting about this, the thing that I feel from you, just as I'm going with your life from like age 12 to 22 or 3, buddy, you have a relentless work ethic.
Well, thank you.
And most of the people that I profiled here on this podcast, the ones that are really successful are the exact same way. My student Mike Swinarski, who I took guitar lessons from me probably 35 years ago in Raleigh, is actually was an investment banker in Long Island, and then after 9/11 decided I want to be a sous chef and I want to play gigs. So he moved to Central Florida, works for Disney, cooking during the day, playing gigs, and he says you have to quote love, love, love it. And it
Oh yeah.
sounds of your attitude about this.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if it's so much being driven, although that's a very nice compliment. I appreciate that. Or maybe being obsessed about it. Just purely obsessed to where it's something that I could do it 24/7 and would never grow tired of doing it. I mean, it's I tell people, after all these years, some people go out and have bowling nights. Well, I always had band nights. On my night off from the family and whatnot, I was going to play music somewhere or practicing with the band or whatever it was. That's just what I did. And there's a whole lot of people, sounds like your friend as well. Uh, that's just our lives. It's what we do.
It's really interesting. I was just sitting here thinking about this. Eddie Blair, who's an old friend and a former bandmate, was the sax player, keyboard player for Nantucket. They did 6 albums on CBS and RCA Records. And one time he says, a lot of guys that I work with, he was a commercial realtor after the Nantucket days, wherever. He said, a lot of guys in my business go out and play golf. And he said, and they lose money. He said, I go out and play music on the weekends and I earn money. And
So true.
as long as you don't have a really serious gear acquisition problem, gas, money as opposed to going out and paying green fees and, throwing clubs in the lake and losing golf balls and all that kind of thing.
I tell you, thinking back A&M, there's uh, one thing that I think about people who have this passion, maybe a little driven and whatnot. When I was there, I lived in a little house about 2 blocks behind the Dixie Chicken on the street called Boyette. And we rented our house from a man named Jack Boyette. So Jack Boyette, apparently his family had owned all that acreage north of campus, back in the day. But about 2 blocks down from my house, he had another tenant down there on Church Street. And when I first got there as a freshman, somebody said, "Oh, there's this guy down the street, and he has gigs or jam sessions on Friday and Saturday night. You just bring your 6 pack of beer and sit down and play. And so then I went down there a couple of times. The guy's named Robert, and it was super fun and whatnot. Well, many years later, I didn't think anything about it, and then one day I look up and here's this guy. He's got an album. It's Robert. It's Robert Earl Keen. Uh, and in fact, one of the songs, in fact, his first hit song off his very first album was called "The Front Porch Song," and it was about those sessions that he played with me, but a lot more people. And then one of the characters in his song is Jack Boyette, who was our mutual landlord there. So uh, Robert has done well. I've admired him for it, and so it's kind of interesting. I mean, there wasn't a huge music scene when I was there, but Lyle Lovett was around and he was playing around, and of course Robert Keene. Lyle was actually starting kind of playing around more like me, and Robert was more just doing it for fun. But he stuck to it, and you talk about having some drive and obsession. He did well.
Well, I think both of those guys, of course, became international recording stars. And if you're not familiar with Texas music, Texas artists, Robert Earl Keen and Lyle Lovett are, of course, two of the greatest ever. But those guys were doing original material recording, and they just continued doing what they're doing.
Yep.
But your job wasn't after graduation wasn't exactly what you planned on being. Is that right?
Yeah, my first wife, now deceased, God bless her. We got married the middle of our senior year, and as I was explaining to her that I'd got this job that was going to make us live overseas, she looked at me. She goes, "That's not going to happen." So all of a sudden, it's like, "Uh-oh, what's Plan B?" So I looked around, and for people that really don't have any particular career focus or anything, one option is to go to law school. So that's what I did. I was very much the accident, and always was the accidental lawyer.
It's so funny. I had a good friend that I worked with here at the member of our church at the Dallas Temple, and he said he was in the military up until I think about 75 or 76. It was time to enlist. He was going to get more money, and he said, "What should he do?" He said he hated blood and he hated school, so he said, "I decided to go to med school."
There you go.
And I think to myself, this is yet another example of pretzel logic. So law school, really?
Really, I don't know. It was just like I said. It was like, I mean, literally, she said that. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? And it worked out. We ended up moving out to Lubbock, and staying out there for the 3 years. Which, by the way, Lubbock is, Lubbock and that whole West Texas thing. It's a really interesting musical scene. And there's a lot of people. I mean, obviously Buddy Holly, Joe Ely, Waylon Jennings. I mean, you can just rattle off a bunch of people that are from there. And people say, "Why are there so many good musicians from West Texas?" And I tell them, because there's nothing else to do. I mean, that it's not like you're going to go see a professional sports team or fine dining. No offense to my friends in Lubbock and Amarillo,
Sure.
but and so music was a thing for us. And, so even when I was in law school, I was playing. I was gigging part time because it was no different than college. I needed the money, and so it was just something I did.
Wow. So after 3 years at Texas Tech now, uh,
Yes.
you graduate and I'm assuming that you get a job after you pass the bar. Is that correct?
Amazingly enough, yes, both of those things happen. Uh, but I ended up in El Paso, which to this day I love, love, love. Love the culture, love the people. It's the biggest small town in America. It's got it's the whole Juarez on one side and El Paso on the other. It's really just one city, although it's different nowadays. But back then, everybody just went back and forth and nobody thought anything about it. The food is great. The scenery, if you love desert mountains, is awesome. I did some gigging out there, and not as much my first couple of years. So I, took a little time off just because I was a little busy. Uh, but then got recruited and came to Dallas in, gosh, I don't know, 87, somewhere in there. Um, and as soon as I got here, I mean, I took up music, big time once again, and that's I was playing regular and have continued to play regularly since then.
So just a couple little asides. First of all, I had the opportunity about 9 years ago to play in El Paso. It's a
Oh,
place, and I'm playing a solo gig, a private party. I think it was a not a wedding. It was some sort of like a birthday party for this woman's husband or grandfather or something. And I'm playing the song El Paso, and we're on this mountain above El Paso. This is west of the Sun Bowl, so
yeah.
it's not part of New Mexico. And I'm looking down there and say out in the West Texas town of El Paso, and it was just a surreal moment.
Oh, yeah.
Mentioned earlier your buddy CW Kendall. Did he book you when you got back here? Did you even bother to make that connection? You just started contacting people
Yeah.
and just there.
Just started contacting people and showing up at places and I was playing. I was doing some solo stuff and also playing with a classic rock band, and we were just kind of playing around town. And there was never a point, at least certainly back then, where although the whole DJ thing caused some damper, but still back then there was lots of places to play. David Card at Poor David's Pub was always nice to me, and our band still is. And there were just places around to play, and so that's what we did.
That's tremendous. And you were an attorney here, practicing what kind of law?
Construction, the most boring law that is known to mankind, but again, I was okay with it. It's what I did.
Wow. And married and playing gigs. And not just one kind of gig, but two kinds. Let me ask a question. Let's go back to solo performing for a moment.
Sure.
When you first started doing that at College Station and maybe even in Bryan, which is a neighboring town, they're both very
Yep.
close.
Right.
Did you have any nerves or fear or trepidation about just taking I'm assuming this is an acoustic guitar, right?
Right.
Did you have any nerves or trepidation about just going in and just playing guitar and singing by yourself?
No, and the reason why is pretty simple. I spent, I don't know what the math works out, but 3 years, a lot of nights just getting up on stage and doing that. So it was just a natural thing for me. It was like, it's like breathing. Just because I was by myself didn't particularly bother me that much. And I kind of liked it. I still like it because, I mean, it gives you the opportunity to sort of do your own thing and interact with people and, talk to people. So it was kind of a natural by that point in time. Now, if I'd have tried that, a few years before that, I'm sure I'd have been up there, fumbling around and looking at my shoes, between songs. But yeah, it was by then it was pretty natural thing.
That's terrific. And so again, you just continued that. Not only, I'm assuming you're doing solo gigs in Lubbock as well as Dallas and El Paso.
A little bit, not so much in Lubbock, just because I was busy and I had a little band, but more in El Paso. And then, like I said, when I got to Dallas, that's when I really got back into it on a regular basis.
So you got to Dallas about 10 years before I did. And, it's interesting. I was told before we moved here from North Carolina by a couple of friends that have relocated to the DFW Metroplex that if you're a guitar player and you can't make it in Dallas, you can't make it. And they were correct, because if you want, you could play 7 nights a week here, which a friend that I sat in with the first weekend we visited told me. So and kind of what's your thing now? You're still playing and are
Oh yeah.
and in what kinds of formats?
Well, right now I've sort of got 3 things going on. When COVID, well, I was in a band called Black Dirt Tango, and now we're a virtual band because when COVID hit, one of our members passed away, unfortunately, with COVID, and I think the steam went out of the band, and but they said they were done with it. I said I was not done, so I started playing a lot more solo. Did that quite a bit. And then I'm doing a thing with a band called Bodoc Revival, which is an Americana thing. We play about half originals, mostly my originals, and some of the other people in the band, and then half covers. It's all sort of it's Americana slash hootenanny kind of thing. It's high energy, lots of fast songs. And then the last thing that I've got going on now was the one of the people that was in Black Dirt Tango. He has been in a classic rock band, literally the same band from the early '60s, and they play early classic rock, the British Invasion stuff, and they're all spectacular musicians. Well, their bass player last year retired and moved to Santa Fe, and so Michael, my friend that played in Black Dirt Tango with me, he says, "You want to play bass?" And I'm like, well, "Sure." And I hadn't done much of that, in the last few years, but it came back, and it's a different deal. It's fun. I don't like that as much as, sorry, Michael, if you're listening, as much as the original stuff and the solo and Americana, but it's still fun. It's a nice break, and people like to dance to that.
So what's the name of that group?
Spectre's Gun Collection.
Wow.
Yeah, they've again they've been together since '63 or '4 maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Same guys.
Awesome.
Well, I guess one or two changes, but most of them are all the same and just super nice guys. I mean, they're just laid back, and you talk about having that stuff nailed. They've got their stuff nailed. So that was a little bit, to tell you about intimidating. It was a little bit intimidating going to playing with those guys, because I'm sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, how am I going to ever catch up with these guys that have been doing it for over 50 years?" But they were gracious and and patient, and so now we're just kind of doing. They don't play a lot, once a month maybe, but still it's good. It's a fun break from what I'm otherwise doing.
It's interesting when you have opportunities to play more than one kind of music. I think that's really good for your headspace. I think it's good just to have a different reference point. I was doing an original project in California, a country western original project in '85, '86. And the bass player, Bill Norris, and I actually ended up producing our demo, which we got some interest from a management company. It really didn't go any further, but we ended up, at this 16 track studio doing the mixing and stuff. We need more pedal steel. Okay, my guitar is too loud here. And I think anytime that you do anything at all like that it gives you a different perspective about what you're playing. Does it sound good? Is this too loud, etc.? And along those lines, let me ask you a question. When you do solo gigs, is it just you and your voice and a guitar, or are you using like a drum machine or a looper or tracks or anything like that?
Well, I would say it sort of started off just being the guitar, but when COVID hit, my wife and youngest son and we all bugged out to a little place we've got out in the country, and one day I was driving through this little town of Clifton, and there's a winery there, and it said open, and this was a time nobody else was open. So I popped my head in there, and I knew the owner, and I said, "Gary," I said, "are you supposed to be open?" He goes, "Dude, if I don't open up, I'm going to lose this business." He says, "I got to be open." And I looked at him and said, "You want some music?" So he said, "Sure." So anyway, I started playing there, and the first few months I was playing there, it was just me and the guitar, and then I had taken my computer and my recording stuff. I do a lot of recording, and had taken it all out to the country with me, and so sort of as a lark at first, I just started making some backing tracks. Played all the instruments on there except for the drums. I used the Easy Drummer to do that. Um, and then, that kind of morphed into, I was playing 3 hours a night, about half of my stuff, half 2/3 of my stuff, and then, half a third of cover stuff, all backing tracks. Well, except for a few songs. I would just do solo, me and the guitar, mostly just for sort of that sonic effect and differentiation. But yeah, I do that, and I've got a little harmonizer on my pedal. But it's kind of an interesting deal. I know you do that as well.
I do, and it's a lot of fun. And I think we talked about this before when we first moved to Dallas. We're in a town called Frisco, and I played every night for 3 years at a steakhouse every Friday and Saturday. And some weeks they would have a wine dinner on Wednesday, so I might be playing 4 nights a week. And I
Mm-hmm.
just got tired and bored of hearing only my voice and only my
Yep.
guitar.
Yep.
And so I wanted to have tracks behind me because I played in bands like you for so many, many years. I got used to having that sound. And so that's what led me to end up doing and creating tracks. And it's interesting, there are some places here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that won't have me perform because I use tracks, but I'm not going to go back and just play acoustic guitar because, as I
Right.
said, I went through that, 25 years ago. So one other quick question, and then we'll wrap up for this episode.
Okay.
That you mentioned that you took your computer. What kind of software are you using for that?
I have a Mac, and I'm running a Logic Pro X. Yeah, it's because it's stupid simple, and that's kind of how I roll. Anything simple is good for me. But I use that as the DAW. I have an Apollo Twin, UA Apollo Twin as my audio interface. My primary microphone is an SM7B, which
Yep.
is a I found it's a great It's a great all-purpose mic. I mean, if you only have time for one mic, I recommend it. It records guitar stuff really well. It records voice stuff really well. And it was just kind of I took a little digital piano down there and my mandolin and my bass and I kind of I'd spend lots of days since there was nothing else going on, just sitting there and my little temporary recording studio, making tracks, and it was fun, and it was fun using them, and it still is. I don't always do it, but it depends on where you are. I mean, some places, particularly when I do winery gigs, they seem to like that full band sound. They certainly can't afford to pay full bands,
Yeah.
which is one of the benefits of having it, but they like that sound. So, because in a lot of those places, you may be, you may be background music for half an hour, but after a while, they're starting to listen, and then they're turning to you and they're engaging, and you can engage them in conversations, whatnot. So anyway, that's you asked me about my software. That's
Once again, everybody, I'm Riley Wilson. You've been listening to the Band of One podcast with my special guest, Steve Henry. If you've got ideas for an upcoming podcast, please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Our webpage, guitarmadesimpler.com, or just email me, riley@guitarmadesimpler.com, and we'll see you next time. For the Band of One podcast, I'm Riley Wilson. Goodbye.